Well, first and foremost, I think we need to understand that there's very big shoes to fill at the international level when we look at Prime Minister Abe's legacy. At the international level, he's strengthened relationships with the United States. He's created and led very important multilateral agreements, such as the Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, as well as the EU-Japan Infrastructure and Connectivity Project. And he's been really a force of stability within the region. The challenges domestically, we're looking at a moribund an economy that's being challenged by the COVID-19 crisis, as well as structural issues, in particular demographics. In this sense, the leader that replaces Prime Minister Abe is going to most likely have to focus on the domestic side, the domestic agenda, and to focus on stability to try and deal with the many challenges that Japan faces domestically, but an increasingly challenged security front in the region and globally.
So you've heard a list of potential successors. Who is most likely to replace him, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the current General Secretary Suga is really on the front line in terms of replacing Prime Minister Abe. And I say that because they have a long established partnership. It will represent stability in terms of policies, and it will represent continuity of some very important policies that Prime Minister Abe has tried to move forward over the past 8 years. Now, there's some other important players in the mix. Of course, Kishida Fumio, who runs the research policy. He's a chairman of the Research Policy Council of the LDP, and that's a very important role in terms of balancing and figuring out how to manage the factions in Japanese politics within the LDP. And there's also the maverick, Kono Taro, who's the current defense minister and former foreign minister, who is outspoken. He has a vision, and I think that he could be another important player down the road. Lastly, there's Ishiba, and Ishiba is a technocrat, and a technocrat known for really, I think, good governance, but unfortunately, he's not well liked within the LDP, which means he's not going to get a lot of traction to move forward. And lastly, there's Motegi, who is currently the foreign minister and is responsible for pushing forward the new TPP, the CPTPP. So there's a panoply of potentials, but I think Suga, because of his relationship with Prime Minister Abe and his really the symbol of stability, is really critical to thinking about who will be the next prime minister in Japan.
So, Stephen, all eyes on that likely replacement. I wanted to get your take on the immediate foreign policy implications of this as well. I think when you look at the optics of the Prime Minister of Japan, clearly he had a very strong relationship with the US President Donald Trump, perhaps one of the few world leaders that President Trump didn't take immediate issue with. It is something that Shinzo Abe was able to execute on very effectively. At the same time, though, this is an opportunity for Japan to hit reset on its relationship with China and South Korea, which are perhaps two areas where Shinzo Abe failed to address in perhaps an effort to strengthen ties with the United States. What are the foreign policy implications of this, if any? And do you see ground being made here under a new leadership in Japan with those relationships in China and South Korea?
Great question, Dan. So first, let's start with the U.S. And I think that you're correct. Prime Minister Abe formed a unique relationship with President Trump. He's sometimes called the Trump whisperer in certain quarters of security circles. But that relationship is not just at the leadership level. What we've seen over the past 4 years under the Trump administration is Japan sent self-defense officials, politicians, academics, think tankers to Washington to form those broad institutional networks that really are the cohesive that gives the U.S.-Japan alliance its strength, its continuity, and sustainability. On the China front, this is a really interesting question. Prime Minister Abe inherited a very bad relationship between the two countries. But until the COVID-19 virus pandemic really took foot in Japan, there was talk of a fifth political document and Xi Jinping having a state visit in Japan at the end of March. I think that's a sign of resuscitating the relationship rather than continued problems with the relationship. The third, of course, is South Korean-Japan relations. And unfortunately, I think that this relationship has tumbled into a negative spiral, despite the conservative nationalist prime minister in 2015 signing a comfort women agreement with the South Koreans. So I think that each relationship is important. Each relationship has moved in a different direction. I have optimism about U.S.-Japan relations, pragmatism about China-Japan relations, and unfortunately pessimism about South Korea and Japan relations until a new leadership comes in the Blue House.